So tides aren't the only process that cause water to move around in the ocean. Another large factor is wind waves, waves that are caused by wind. So as wind blows over the surface of the ocean, it's going to create shear on the surface of the ocean, which is going to cause waves to form. Okay. So high energy wind creates high energy waves. You've probably experienced this if you've ever been to the coast, right? It gets really choppy when it's really windy. It's much calmer when there's not a lot of wind, right? You might have also noticed if you've ever gone swimming off of our coast, that if you're at the surface of the water and the waves are just too energetic, too big, you don't want to be in all of that wave energy anymore, all you have to do is dive down beneath the water, because the deeper you go, the less the water is moving around with that wave. And that's what we call, or that's because as waves pass by, the water within that wave travels in a circle, in a little orbital. Near the surface, the orbitals are large. As you get deeper and deeper and deeper, the orbitals get smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually the water just stops moving. And that's what we call wave base. So if you're ever in waves and you get tired of being pushed around in the waves, just dive deep, try to get close to wave base, and now those waves won't push you around anymore. You won't be able to feel those waves. Now, as waves approach the shore, the friction slows the base of the wave. And this causes the top of the wave to topple over. So think of it kind of like you're riding in a car, right? The top of you is away from the car. The bottom of you is actually touching the car. And as the car slows down, especially if it slows down quickly, the bottom of you, because your seat is in contact with the car, there's friction there, the bottom of you slows down, then the top of you, and the top of you gets slung forward, right? They slam on the brakes in the car, your head gets slung forward. The exact same thing happens in a wave. As the base of the wave comes into contact with the ocean floor, and that ocean floor slows down that wave base, the top of the wave is going to crash over. We call that a breaker. As the wave crashes over and it washes up the beach, we call that swash. As that water then slides back down the beach toward the ocean, we call that backwash. So the swash and the backwash of a wave. Now, if you pay attention when you go to the beach, you'll often notice that the waves don't come directly on shore. They often come slight at an angle. So the swash is at an angle up the beach, and then the backwash falls back down. And the swash is up at an angle at the beach, and the backwash falls back down. And this creates a zigzag pattern of the swash and the backwash. And because sediment is being moved around in this swash and backwash, that sediment is transported in a zigzag pattern that has a net direction to it. And that net direction we call the longshore drift. So you might have experienced this, right? If you're ever swimming offshore, you put your stuff on the beach, you run into the water, you're in the water for a long time, and when you finally get out, you're hundreds of feet down the beach, right? That's because you got caught up in that longshore drift and because of the oblique angle of the waves. Now, hopefully you've never been caught up in a rip current. When waves bring water straight onto the shore, right? I said often waves will bring in water more at an angle, but when they bring in water closer to straight onto the shore, a rip current can develop, because as that water is pushed straight up the shore, it needs to have a place to fall back down. But if the waves keep pushing it straight up, then it can be channeled into a rip current that allows that water to move back out into the ocean. And the rip current can be very, very strong. If you ever do get caught in a rip current, the best advice I can give you is not to panic, because if you panic, then you're going to waste energy. So don't panic, remain calm, and swim parallel to the shore until you're out of the rip current before swimming back to shore. If you try to swim just straight back to shore, you're going to be fighting that rip current and you're going to lose a lot of energy. And that's how people get swept out to sea. So swim parallel to the beach until you're out of the rip current, and then swim back in, let the waves carry you back to the beach. Now, this can be incredibly dangerous, right? Rip currents are something that we talk about, especially living on the coast, but I think people often don't appreciate how devastating they can be. I've actually been caught in a rip current before, and I was just so surprised how strong it was. And I was swept out to sea, and I did become terrified and I did started losing energy until I made myself calm down. I made myself, like swim parallel to the beach, but it can be very frightening. And if you don't know what to do, you can get swept out to the ocean. And this does happen occasionally on our coast. So here are a few news articles. Georgia man saved his 8-year-old daughter from rip current in Florida, but then he drowned. Rip currents are blamed for 2 deaths in Georgia back in 2015, right? So it's not an uncommon occurrence on our coast. So, which means in order to protect ourselves, we have to know what happens, what we should do if we get in a rip current. We also need to know what to do to avoid getting in one in the first place. So you can often see rip currents as breaks in the waves, right? It almost looks like there's a part of the water surface that just doesn't have waves in it, whereas the parts around it do. So can you spot the rip current in this picture? Yep, it's that part without waves, right? So if you were to go swimming in that part, you could get washed out to sea. So be very careful when you go to the beach.